Neighbor slipped a birthday card under my door every single year for 22 years, always on the same day, the 15th of March. Whether there was a blizzard outside or blazing sun, whether I was home or not, I never thought to ask her why she kept doing it after the first few years. I just thought that was simply who she was. Mildred had always been thoughtful that way. She was 74 when the stroke took her. 3 days in the hospital, then nothing. Her son called me from the waiting room, and I sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs just stopped working. 22 years of living 12 feet away from each other, our driveways running parallel like train tracks, our kitchen windows facing the same stand of oak trees. I'd known her longer than I'd known anyone in this state. Her son and I had always been polite, but not close. He lived in Phoenix, came home for Christmas, called his mother on Sundays. A good son, not a present one. He handled the arrangements quickly and professionally, the way people do when grief sits on them like a weight they need to move. At the small service, just a dozen people, mostly from her church, he thanked me for being a good neighbor to her. He said his mother always spoke of me warmly. I didn't try until I was back in my own house. I had a box. I should explain the box first. The cards came in regular number 10 envelopes, the white kind you buy at the drugstore. Mildred never used anything fancy. But starting the third or fourth year, I stopped throwing them away. I don't know why exactly. Some instinct, I suppose. I stacked them in a shoebox I kept on the shelf in my hall closet, behind the spare towels. Every March 15th, a new one appeared under my door, and eventually, sometime in April or May, I'd get around to tucking it in the box. I never reread them. I wasn't even sure I'd read all of them the first time. Sometimes I'd skim the signature, register that it was from Mildred, and set it in the box without sitting with it. 22 cards, 22 years. I'd never once read a single one carefully. The week after Mildred's funeral, her son came back to start clearing out her house. He asked if I wanted anything of hers to remember her by. I said no, but thank you. What I didn't tell him was that the memories weren't in her house, they were in my closet. I pulled the box down 2 weeks later, on a grey Tuesday afternoon in November. I was trying to find a spare light bulb, actually, and the box was in the way. I set it on the hall table, intending to move it. Then I stood there for a moment. Then I sat down on the floor with it in my lap. I took out the oldest card first. The envelope was yellowing slightly at the corners. Inside, Mildred had written in her small looping cursive, "Happy birthday, Gwen. Here's to another year of good coffee and better gossip. Mm. I smiled. That was Mildred. We had standing Tuesday coffee at her kitchen table for most of those 22 years. She ground her own beans, which I always teased her about. I set the card down and reached for another. Then I noticed something. Mildred's handwriting on the card I'd just put down. It continued on the back. I hadn't flicked it over. I picked it back up. The back of the card was covered in her handwriting, smaller and more careful than the cheerful front. I had to get my reading glasses. March 2003. I don't want to worry you, and I might be wrong, but your husband came home at 2 a.m. last Thursday. I was up with my hip. He parked down the block, not in your driveway. I watched him walk to your door. He didn't want to be seen. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I sat very still on the floor of my hallway. Then I opened the next card. March 2004. I saw him at the Courtyard Marriott on Route 9. I was dropping off Ruth from her book club. She's been staying there since the separation. He didn't see me. He was checking in. It was checking in. It was getting in. It was a Wednesday. You told me he was in Columbus that week for the regional conference. I'm sorry. My hands were not shaking yet. I think I was too stunned. My brain was doing something mechanical, just opening the next one. March 2005. I don't know her name. Young. Dark hair. She picked him up from the hardware store on a Saturday. I was driving past. I almost stopped. I almost called you that night. I'm sorry I didn't. I told myself maybe I'd misunderstood. The hardware store. My husband Dennis had owned a hardware store on Clement Street for 16 years. Him and his brother Frank together. I had met Dennis at 29, married him at 31, and we had been together for 31 years at the time of Mildred's funeral. We had 2 children, a son in his mid-30s who lived in Portland with his wife, and a daughter in her late 20s still in the area. We had a house with a mortgage we'd nearly finished paying. We had a retirement fund we discussed every January over tax forms, and a plan, Dennis's plan, to sell our shares in the hardware store when he turned 65 and move somewhere warmer. I sat on the floor and read all 22 cards. Every single one had a birthday greeting on the front and a record on the back. Not every year had something new. 2009 was just the greeting. 2013 was blank on the back except for one line. I pray this year I have nothing to write here. Happy birthday. But most of them had something. Dates. Times. Things Mildred had seen from her car, her front window, her seat at Ruth's book club. The name appeared for the first time in 2011, a woman named Kay. I overheard your husband on the phone in your driveway. He didn't know I was weeding near the fence. He called her honey. Kay. I had never heard that name in 31 years. By 2015, the entries were longer. I've been watching more carefully since I saw the credit card statement. I'm sorry, it fell out of your mailbox when the wind caught it, and I tucked it back. But I saw the line items. A restaurant in Marin on a Friday you thought he was visiting Frank in Sacramento. A hotel in Napa the weekend you were in Denver for your sister's surgery. I don't know how to tell you this. I don't know if you'd believe me. I stopped. I put the card face down on the floor and pressed my hand flat against the hallway tile. I remembered that weekend. My sister's gallbladder surgery, a full 3 days, my brother-in-law pacing the waiting room. Dennis had said he was holding down the fort at home. He'd texted me pictures of the backyard, the dog, the dinner he'd made. He'd said he missed me. I picked up the next card. By 2018, Mildred had hired someone. I don't know how else to read it. I have a friend from church whose nephew does this kind of work. Professionally, I paid him to follow Dennis for 4 weeks. I have photographs. I have a log. I want you to have them when the time is right. I've put everything with my attorney, a man named Robert Fielding in San Rafael. He knows to contact you when I'm gone. I'm so sorry, Gwen. I've been trying to figure out for 15 years how to tell you. Every time I try in my head, you love him so much. You always have. I can see it. So I kept writing it down instead, waiting for something to change, waiting for the right moment. The right moment never came. I sat on that floor for a long time. Then I got up, went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the window looking at Mildred's house. Dark now. Her son had taken most of her things already. The kitchen light she used to leave on was off. I thought about 22 years of Tuesday coffees. I thought about how Mildred used to ask, very gently, questions about how Dennis and I were doing, how things were between us. I always said, fine, wonderful, he's a good man. And she would nod and pour more coffee and not say anything else. I thought about a conversation we'd had maybe 12 years ago, standing in her driveway in the summer. She'd started to say something. I can hear her voice now, the way she paused. Gwen, I want to ask you something. And I need you not to get upset. I'd laughed and said, Mildred, you're my neighbor, not my therapist. And she'd laughed too, and whatever she'd been about to say, she let it go. I had given her the easy way out, and she'd taken it because she loved me too much to push. Dennis came home at 6:30. I was sitting at the kitchen table with all 22 cards laid out in order, the birthday greetings facing up. He came in through the garage, set his keys on the counter, said something about traffic on the bridge. He had his back to me. I said, how long has it been going on with Kay? He turned around slowly. He looked at the cards on the table. Then he looked at me. I watched something move across his face, not surprise exactly, something more like a man realizing a door he thought was locked has been open the whole time. He sat down. I didn't tell him about Mildred. Not yet. I just watched him sit there, this man I'd shared a bed with for 31 years, and I waited. He said it had started in 2002. 2002. Our son had been 4 years old. Our daughter had been 18 months. I had been back at work for 6 months after maternity leave, commuting 40 minutes each way, exhausted in a way that lives in your bones. 21 years. I said, "Is she still in your life?" He said yes. I stood up. I walked to our bedroom and I closed the door and I sat on the edge of the bed and I looked at the framed photo on his nightstand, the four of us at the Grand Canyon, kids 12 and 10, all of us squinting into the sun. I thought about who I'd been in that photo, what I'd known and not known. I called my daughter. She didn't answer. I left a message that said, "I need you to come over tonight if you can." She called back within 3 minutes. She could hear something in my voice. She was there by 8. I told her everything, the cards, the years, what was written on the backs. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, and when I was done, she was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "Mon, I think I knew something was wrong. I felt it for years. I didn't know what it was." I reached across the table and held her hand. Dennis had moved to the guest room by the time she arrived. I didn't ask him to. He just went. Some part of him, I think, had been waiting for this for a very long time, too. The next morning, I called Robert Fielding's office in San Rafael. The receptionist said she'd been expecting my call and asked if I could come in that day. I drove over the bridge alone with the radio off. Robert Fielding was in his 60s, quiet, straightforward. He had a file folder that was 2 inches thick. He pushed it across the desk and told me that Mildred had come to him in the spring of 2019 after she'd been diagnosed with the heart condition she'd been managing for the last 4 years. "She wanted to make sure you'd have what you needed," he said. She was very clear about that. The file contained the photographs his investigator had taken, credit card records. Mildred had obtained affidavits from her church friend's nephew who had documented patterns of cash withdrawals over 4 years. There were hotel receipts, a lease agreement on a studio apartment in Sausalito, under Dennis's name, going back 7 years. I had never known about the apartment. He had been paying $1,100 a month for 7 years to maintain a second address 20 minutes from our house. I did the math while sitting in that office. Nearly $100,000, money that should have been going toward the retirement fund we discussed every January. Robert Fielding said that Mildred had also left a small account in my name. She had put money aside over several years, pulling from her own savings, not a large amount. Enough, she had written in the letter included in the file, to make sure you can breathe for a minute before you decide what to do next. Everyone needs a minute. I hope you use it well. He gave me the letter. It was handwritten on yellow legal paper, in that same small cursive I'd been reading on the backs of birthday cards all evening. "Dear Gwen," it began, "if you're reading this, you found the cards. I am so sorry it took me this long to find a way to tell you. I tried once, in the driveway that summer, you remember. But you laughed, and I lost my nerve. The truth is, I was afraid, not of Dennis, of losing you. You are one of the great friendships of my life, and I thought if I pushed too hard and you didn't believe me, I'd lose those Tuesday coffees, and I couldn't stand the thought of that. That was selfish of me. I should have been braver. I watched you love him for 22 years. It's a real thing what you have with him. That made it harder, not easier. Real love deserves the truth. You deserve to know. I just couldn't find the right way to give it to you. I hope you're angry with me. I deserve that. But I hope underneath the anger you know that everything I did because you matter to me, not as a neighbor, as a friend, as the person I had coffee with on Tuesday mornings and argued with about crossword answers, and called when my hip was bad and Dennis had to drive me to the ER at 2 in the morning. Wait, you didn't know about that night. It was 2016. My hip locked up badly at 3 in the morning and I couldn't reach my son. I knocked on your door. Dennis drove me to Marin General and waited 4 hours. He brought coffee. He sat in the waiting room and read old magazines, and he was very kind. He's not a bad man, Gwen. He's a man who made a choice and kept making it. And those are two different things. I need you to know I can hold both of those things in my mind at once. I love you. Use the money for whatever you need. Call my son if you need the name of a good accountant. He's useless about most things, but he knows numbers. Your neighbor, Mildred. I cried in Robert Fielding's office. He pushed a box of tissues across the desk without saying anything, which was exactly the right thing to do. The divorce took 8 months. Dennis did not fight it. I think in the end, it was almost a relief for him too, the particular exhaustion of maintaining a lie for 2 decades. We divided the house equity, the retirement fund, the hardware store shares. My attorney, a woman named Denise Carr, who came recommended by my daughter's colleague, was thorough and patient. She helped me understand every line of every document, which was something I had never done before. Dennis had handled our finances for 30 years. I had trusted him with all of it. That I learned is something you should never do, not because your partner is untrustworthy, but because it is your life and your money, and you have a right to understand it. My son flew in from Portland when it was over. He sat at my kitchen table in Mildred's chair by habit and said, "Mum, I want to ask you something. Are you okay? Actually okay?" I thought about it honestly. "I think I'm going to be," I said. The house felt different after Dennis left, quieter in ways I expected and louder in ways I didn't. I could hear the oak trees at night. I started grinding my own coffee. It wasn't until the third Tuesday after the divorce that I understood why. I was sitting at my kitchen table at 9 in the morning with a full cup going cold, and I realized I was waiting for a knock at the door that wasn't coming. That was the hardest morning. I sold the house that spring. Too many layers of things in the walls. I bought a small condo in a complex on the other side of town, on the second floor with windows facing west, and I started over with less furniture and more light. A woman moved in next door in August, younger than me by 30 years, recently separated, quiet in the way people are when they're not sure yet how to be in a new space. I brought her a coffee cake and introduced myself. Her name was Tamsin. She had a daughter in middle school and an expression that I recognized from the inside, that particular blankness of someone who has been putting one foot in front of the other for so long she's forgotten what she's walking toward. We became friendly, and one evening in October, sitting on her small balcony while her daughter did homework inside, she said something that stopped me. "I don't know what's happening with our money," she said. "I used to know. But he took over all of it a few years ago and I let him, because I was so tired. And now I don't even know where to start looking." I knew a woman named Denise Corr who was thorough and patient. I knew what bank statements looked like and how to read them. I knew about forensic accountants and how to request copies of joint tax returns going back 7 years, and how to put together a documentation binder, and what to do first and second and third when the ground drops out from under you. "Start here," I said, and I spent the next 2 hours showing her where it travels in condo complexes, in the way it does in any small community. Tamsin told a friend, the friend told a neighbor. By spring, I was doing informal sessions at the community room on the first floor, Friday afternoons. Whoever wanted to come. Financial literacy, I called it, though it was really just, here is how to know where you stand. Here is how to see clearly. Here is what I wish someone had shown me at 35. My daughter helped me put together a one-page handout, then a website, then a name. We called it the Birthday Card Project. I kept one card. It sits in a small frame on the windowsill in my kitchen, next to the coffee grinder. The birthday greeting is on the front, Mildred's looping handwriting, a little faded now. I keep the back visible. The last entry, from March 2023, written just 8 months before Mildred died. I may have run out of time to do this right, but you'll find what you need. You always have. Happy birthday, Gwen. I love you. Don't forget to flick the card over. I should have flipped it over years ago. I know that. I've made my peace with it. The shame of it, the not seeing, the not asking, the years of loving someone and trusting him with all of it. That shame had a long winter, but I've come out the other side. Here is what I want to say to you. Whoever you are, reading this or watching this or listening to this while you fold laundry or sit in a parking lot or lie awake at 3 in the morning with something you can't quite name pressing on your chest. Know where your money is, not because you suspect something, not because you're paranoid, because it is your life and it is your money and you are allowed to understand it. Open the joint account, request the statements, read the tax return this year, ask questions. You are not being difficult. You are being an adult. And if something already feels wrong, that small quiet voice in the back of your mind that you keep talking yourself out of, listen to it. Trust it. It is smarter than you give it credit for. Mildred tried to tell me for 22 years. She left the truth for me in 22 envelopes. She found a way. Sometimes love looks like 22 years of birthday cards. Sometimes it looks like a shoebox in a hallway closet. Sometimes it looks like someone braver than you, doing the work you didn't know you needed done, hoping you'll find it before it's too late. I found it. It was nearly too late, but I found it. Flip the card over. There's a coffee grinder on my windowsill now. I bought it 6 months after the divorce, and every morning when I use it I think about Mildred, about the way she ground her own beans and I always teased her for it, and how I became her anyway, quietly, without noticing. That's how the people who love us leave their mark, not in the big gestures, in the small habits we absorb from them and carry forward. I've thought a lot about what Mildred did and why she did it the way she did. For a long time I was angry about the how. 22 years is a long time to carry a secret. 22 years of writing on the backs of birthday cards instead of knocking on my door and saying the words out loud. I understand why she didn't. I do now. But understanding something doesn't mean the sting goes away overnight. What I've come to believe is that Mildred was, in her own quiet way, doing the most decent thing she knew how to do. She didn't abandon me to ignorance. She didn't wash her hands of it. She stayed, she watched, she wrote it all down, she hired someone, she found an attorney, she set aside money from her own savings. Every single year she chose me, that kind of loyalty. The kind that keeps showing up even when it's inconvenient, even when it's costly, even when the other person has no idea. That's what I think of when people talk about what it means to be a good person. It's not dramatic, it's just consistent. It's just choosing, again and again, to do right by someone even when they can't see it. Dennis made a different kind of choice. He made it in 2002 and kept making it for 21 years. I don't think he was a monster. Mildred said as much in her letter, and she was right. He drove her to the emergency room at 2 in the morning and waited 4 hours and brought coffee. He was capable of kindness. What he lacked was the honesty to stop the lie when it was still small. And what followed from that, the years of forged signatures, the hidden apartment, the $100,000 quietly redirected, all of that came from the first choice and the second, and the compounding weight of everyone that came after. That's how it works. The consequences weren't punishment handed down from somewhere. They were just the natural end of the road he'd been walking for 2 decades. What I had to rebuild was harder to name. It wasn't just the finances, though those were real and I had to learn fast. It was the part of me that had handed everything over and called it trust. Real trust doesn't mean looking away. It means staying engaged. It means knowing where your money is and asking questions when the answers don't add up, and not letting love become a reason to stop thinking clearly. I know that now. I learned it the hard way, the way most people learn the things that actually stick. And then there's what came after. Tamsin on the balcony, the Friday sessions in the community room, the women who showed up not knowing where to start. I didn't plan any of that. I just did the next right thing in front of me and then the next one. That's all resilience ever is, I think. Not some enormous reserve of strength you either have or you don't. Just the willingness to get up one more time and do the next small thing. Mildred did that for 22 years. I'm trying to do it for as long as I have. The card in the frame says, "Don't forget to flip the card over." I won't. Not again.